We're going to kick this off. I want to welcome everyone to our panel where we discuss Section 3, unlocking the power of Section 3, how Section 3 requirements can be used to empower residents in public housing. We know that there are some folks on our way, but I want to be respectful of the time of folks who are here and make sure we have a full conversation, so we're going to go ahead and jump in. My name is Manny Septimo. I represent the 84th Assembly District in the South Bronx, which is home to several public housing developments, many of which are in need of desperate repair, and many public housing advocates, residents who are empowered and who are working every day to make sure that we're unlocking the power of the system to serve them in every way. So I'm really excited to be hosting this conversation. I would be completely remiss if I didn't say thank you to Lee and Edna, who have done incredible work in pulling this together and are really pioneers in the space. So thank you for your work and your efforts. And in the interest of just jumping right in, I'm going to sort of quickly walk us through the program. We'll be hearing from each of our distinguished panelists, and then we're going to open it up to audience questions and participation, because not just questions, but we know that if you're here, you're also an expert in some way, and we want to hear from you in terms of your perspectives. And so first, I'm going to turn it over to Clem Richardson, who's going to give us an overview of what we're talking about here today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you all for thank you all for coming on this snowy morning to hear what could be a life-changing program if it was implemented properly. Section 3 can change lives, can change whole communities.
For a second.
Yes, sir.
If you hold it in terms of, yeah.
There
you go.
Hi. Section 3 has the potential to change the face of the city of New York. It's as simple as that. I will read from my remarks. We have a PowerPoint, but that's going to be a little difficult because it's on her laptop and it's behind me. We can flip through it. Can you flip through it as we go through that? And it's here behind us. Section 3 is federal law that provides low and very low income people living in public housing with skills training to become financially self-aware, self-sufficient, and achieve upward mobility. And so thank you. Why is it important? There are billions of federal housing construction dollars awarded annually, and residents of public housing should have access to those funds or should benefit from those funds, because they're awarded, this money is used to renovate and do a bunch of work in public housing developments that residents can be trained to perform the jobs for which the money is made available. It's been there since, Section 3 has been around since 1968, when it was approved as part of the Housing and Urban Development HUD Act. It's been underutilized ever since. Money is being left on the table. Our Legal Skills Center, our organization, our goals are to make Section 3 a household name, to ensure comprehensive Section 3 programming and robust recruitment, so that people in public housing get this money and these opportunities, and to secure HUD's effective monitoring of Section 3. And that's the most important part of this as this discussion unfolds. We really, it's a very soft law, although it can change everything for people who are looking for jobs, looking for training, who live in public housing, of low and very low income people. You are a Section 3 worker if your income for the previous year is below the income limit established by HUD. You are employed by a Section 3 business concern, or you are a youth bill participant at early in the morning. Sorry. You can become a Section 3 worker if your employer is a Section 3 Youth Bill is a community-based pre-apprenticeship program that provides job training and educational opportunities for at-risk youth ages 16 to 24 who have previously dropped out of high school. Youth Bill participants learn vocational skills in construction as well as in other in-demand industries that include healthcare, information technology, and hospitality. Youth also provide community service with the required construction or rehabilitation of affordable housing for low-income or homeless families in their own neighborhoods. Become Section 3 business concern and eligibility for Section 3 funding. You must meet at least one of the below criteria within the last 6 months. The business is at least 51% 41% owned and controlled by current public housing residents. In businesses that at least 51% owned and controlled by low or very low income persons. Over 75% of the labor hours over the past 3 months were done by Section 3 workers. In New York, there are more than 85 housing authorities that are Section 3 eligible. Here are some of the ways we are committed to getting the word out. Enlistment of statewide legislative Section 3 point person, who are representatives over here today. Leveraging statewide events such as the New York State Black and Puerto Rican Legislative Weekend to share information with you so you can also spread the word. Holding statewide hearings on present and future states of Section 3 programming and enforcement. Model program for citywide implementation, we're creating a detailed job description, including performance, metrics, deliverables, and timelines, the identification of all sources of Section 3 funds, the collaboration with all Section 3 recipients, liaising with HUD regional offices to coordinate monitoring and enforcement, regular reporting on performance metrics and corrective action planning, holding of statewide hearings on present and future states of Section 3 programming and enforcement. Basically, what we're asking, Section 3 of the HUD Act of 1968 mandates that any funding that HUD gives on certain funding lines, 50 to 30% of that money can be used to employ and train people, low and very low income people, to do the work that money is funded for. And that's all we want them to do. It is not being done as it should, and lots of folks who could use the work, who could use the training, who could change whole communities if they had this work and had this training, are not getting that work. And we will speak more about that as your questions progress, but then I'll move it back to the second.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I was joking earlier. I said, this is really early in the morning. As I was walking over, I saw someone that said, happy birthday. And I realized it was because I just haven't had coffee yet. So, I'm Alicka Ampry-Samuel, the Regional Administrator at HUD. And I am... Yes. Still got it. Okay, so thanks, Clem. Thanks, Manny, for just really putting this together. Thanks, Assemblywoman. Very important topic. And I just wanted to pull out a couple of things from what Clem just said. He mentioned billions of dollars. I just wanted to put the number up right now. At this very moment, across the country, there's $15 billion worth of programming under Section 3. So the number and 15 billion with a B. So I just wanted to highlight that part. And so within the department, I wanted to highlight this part, and me and Manny had conversations 1,000 times about this. And I have up here the word trust, and I'm not talking about the Preservation Trust. I have here build trust in government. And the reason why I'm saying that is because we know the challenges that the federal government has had or have claimed to have had with employing residents on projects that are funded by the government, funded by HUD. And so at this particular time under this administration, the conversation from our secretary and from the White House is just making sure that we rebuild trust with residents. And so I just wanted to highlight that part because it's real. And I also wanted to highlight the White House Task Force on Worker Organizing and Empowerment. And when we talk about Section 3, we know it's a very old law, but this right here is under the Biden administration, where President Biden actually put out an executive order across the federal government agencies to make sure that there is a direct focus, emphasis, and engagement around workforce development, worker empowerment of our residents, of folks in our communities that we serve. And so this is, and I don't know, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, I have never, ever, Barack Obama talked about it a lot with promise neighborhoods and choice neighborhoods, but this is the first time where I've ever seen a president stand up and the vice president stand up and actually put into writing and not just challenge, but demand on behalf of the White House that we do something. And it's not just talk, but there's actually action. And so we are now in the moment where we are required to do something. And within this, there are 70 recommendations that came out of the task force, and 3 of them were specific, 4 of them were specific to HUD. And the first one is what I wanted to highlight. Review HUD's current Section 3 enforcement and identify improvements. And I'm not going to go through all the others in the interest of time, but I wanted to highlight the review HUD's current Section 3 enforcement and identify improvements, because I think that's this conversation that we're having today, and that's what we're going to focus on. And so everyone here has heard about Section 3 and, it's been around. But this part here I also wanted to focus on, and that's the executive order from President Biden, 13984, where he speaks specifically to advancing racial equity. Again, just highlighting, this is not talk. We have a President of the United States and the Vice President actually talking about advancing racial equity and actually stating that Section 3 is a part of how you advance racial equity. And another one I wanted to highlight is the fact that we moved from Section 3 used to be under our Fair Housing and Economic Opportunity Division. And anytime you have a complaint against the government and it's related to discrimination or the work wasn't done right, all of those complaints go through FHEO. And because they received every single complaint, it's the government. I'm going to put a period on that. And so, y'all know what I'm saying, right? It's early in the morning. And so it made sense to move the Section 3 piece of the agency out of FHEO and put it in the field, because we're talking about work on the local level. And so now the oversight and monitoring is in field. FPM stands for Field Policy and Management. That's the office that you see. We have 64 field offices across the country, and now Section 3 falls under Field Policy and Management and not Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity Office. And the FPM team collaborates with all of the program offices. So when we talk about Section 3, we usually talk about public housing authorities, and that's it. We talk about construction work. But people rarely talk about the fact that it's all government, well, most government contracts. So that falls under our Community Planning and Development Department, which allocates all of the CDBG funds, Community Planning Development and Grants, right? And so Section 3 is also under the other program offices in HUD, not just public housing. And so just talking with our local elected officials, the funding that HUD gives to the cities and the states have a Section 3 requirement as well. So I think it's just important to highlight that. And also the new rule moves from how many hires for a project to actual labor hours. And we may debate all day long about if that was a big change or not, but the change is here, and it's gonna be good. We're gonna make it good. We're gonna make it work. And so that's a huge piece, I think, of the conversation as well, is related to we could now see out of all the labor hours that a company has placed in the system, 25% of those hours have to be Section 3 labor. And so just wanted to highlight that part. And this is just a comparison of the rules. And I wanted to lift up accountability. Again, the White House is holding us accountable. And so this conversation is going to be related to what do we have to do? What do you all have to do? What can we do together to hold HUD accountable? And reporting and data transparency, I wanted to just pinpoint the fact that there was a system, there was a database that was decommissioned called Spears. And that database is decommissioned, it no longer exists, and now is I think, the time is right for us to be able to emphasize what that database should look like, what should be in it, and what we need to gain from it, and be just as transparent as possible. And oversight and compliance, that's the purpose of this conversation, so I'll just click through that. And this is the start of the outreach and engagement, and I know that's a conversation that we're going to have. And so I'll just pause there so that I can give Manny the mic.
There you go. Thank you so much. Good morning. Good morning, everyone, for coming. I want to share my appreciation to Regional Director Alicka Ampry-Samuel. I remember when she was the council member in Brooklyn. That's when we first met. And also to Clem Richardson. A lot of people don't know, he used to be the editor for the Daily News. To have such distinguished persons talking about this particular matter is significant, because the opportunity is significant. We have to understand some points of where this comes from, right? This is legislation that was ratified in 1968. That is civil rights era economic legislation. There was a recent recent president of a financial institution, McCaffrey, who stated, you can't have social justice without economic justice. And this is the economic justice that's worth billions. You just heard the regional director put $15 billion across the country. Now, the New York City Housing Authority, I am a resident council president for the South Jamaica Housing Community. I represent that community to the New York City Housing Authority. I'm also the district chair for Queens South, in which I represent 11, in which I chair an alliance of 11 different resident councils who now speak to policy matters and the execution of those policies to the Housing Authority. So seeing Section 3 implemented has been witnessed by me, or at least the deficiency of it, right? We're not seeing the numbers that should be rolling out from this program. It's significant in New York City because NYCHA has had 170,000 units, which means that they roughly had just under 20% of all public housing units throughout the country. And so they're receiving a large chunk of funds. Currently, the active contracts that trigger Section 3 just in New York City is in the multiples of billions. And so we have 330,000, a population of 330,000. So that would be, in New York State, the second largest city-sized population in the state. And we, in 2021, I sat on a working group for Section 3 with NYCHA, and we identified roughly over 70,000 people between 18 and 62 non-disabled of working age that were not reporting an income from employment. But REIS, which is the economic department that NYCHA has, that's focused on networking the labor resource from the resident population to contractors, they only have about 4% penetration of that population. So there's a significant mismatch. Now, I will say this. In the words of Dr. King, right? If you can't fly, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. This is not something that's going to change overnight. Let's remember that this was created in 1968, and the elements in government were not what's present today. And so we are looking at incremental changes because incrementally, if we push this forward and we're able to, like how Alicka Ampry-Samuel just mentioned, if we start engaging these new opportunities and start re-strategizing, how to get these opportunities to the people that need it the most, we can ensure that impact, right? We can turn that drip into a small stream, into an actual flow that will change lives, will change families, the directions of families. When I look at the fact that when we start taking in consideration numbers that have been put out. So the city comptroller back in 2020, who was Scott Stringer, right? We have a different comptroller today. And Brad Landis is amazing, I appreciate him. But this particular information identified that from 2010 to 2020, NYCHA expended $19.8 billion in contracts. Now, not all of that was Section 3, but at least more than half. And so when you take $10 billion of Section 3 contracts that were funded, and at that time, the new regulations took this particular parameter out, which is something that we need to discuss. But at that time, 10% of the contract value was supposed to go to Section 3 business concerns, and 0% went to Section 3 business concerns. That means that the New York City public housing community lost $1 billion in business development funds that were there. Now, what kind of impact that would have had on our communities, what kind of change that would have had, how many people would not have gone to jail, or how many people would not have died because they were too busy, distracted by an actual career. And so we have to take this into consideration as motivation and as the hope that we can change this moving forward, right? Again, incremental changes are huge. There's a book that speaks about habit change, and it says 1% compounded over time becomes a huge impact. And so that's what this particular discussion reflects. That's what us coming together and having these powerful voices in these positions, Senator Septimo, Alicka, Ampry-Samuel, as well as, the New York State Legislature that has had a change, the council, the New York City Council that has had a change. We have hope now, but we have to make sure that this conversation is furthered, that goes beyond this table, and it goes to you guys. And then you guys bring this conversation, and just even if you don't have a full understanding, just say Section 3 is something that we need to look into, that we need to focus on, because this can change the city. Lastly, I want us to remember one thing. Collectively, like an individual can have an impact, but collectively, if we start making sure that this conversation is a prioritized conversation, especially with programs and legislation coming from the White House that's focused on racial equity and inclusion, right? Biden also put together, when he first got into office, of racial equity, where he's researching racial disparities throughout federal government. So this focus that we have now, we need to start putting the attention into priorities. Dollars. We need dollars. Our communities need dollars. And this particular program, with the amount of funds that it is, and that's present, and the amount of opportunities, right? The disrepair that we constantly see on TV, in the news, of public housing, the deterioration, the infrastructure, right? This means now we can connect that, the opportunity. This is acres of diamonds that we're looking at. And so the responsibility of us mining these acres of diamonds belongs to the collective us. And I'm very hopeful. Thank you.
All right. I told you we have bona fide experts. Welcome to everyone who's joined us since we began. And so now we want to open it up to questions, comments, thoughts. Again, a panel of experts, with really deep expertise, and at the center of the work right now. So if you have a question, please don't be shy. Yeah. Alicka.
Alicka, sorry. You were saying something about the community planning. I couldn't catch everything that you were saying about the community.
So right now, because of what came out of the recommendations from the White House Task Force, there is an opportunity to have visioning sessions. There's an opportunity to have community convenings and conversations related to what the community can do to make sure that they have the tools and the credentials to be able to, if you want to be a Section 3 business, or around organizing residents who want to know about Section 3, but I guarantee most people do, but also what do we need to do to make sure that they're on the jobs. So it's making sure that we are intentional about these community conversations. And another piece that came out of the task force is the fact that HUD has dollars, we have money, we have technical assistance dollars, where we can go in and contract with a community organization or firm to provide technical assistance to businesses as well as to resident associations, the public housing authorities in of itself. We're sitting here and we talk a lot about the New York City Housing Authority because our amazing Assemblywoman is representing New York City, but this is across the state of New York. And so just being mindful that Buffalo Public Housing Authority, Syracuse, there are some other cities across New York that have large housing authorities and receive a lot of community plan development, community block grants. And so there's opportunities across the board.
Thank you so much.
Other questions? Please. And then you guys.
Good morning. What are the proper channels an individual would have to go through to be allocated to Section 3 or to utilize it?
As a business, to be designated as Section 3 business? I think that's for you.
It's for all of us. I think Manny's the expert here. It's a matter of being able to, one, you can reach out to your housing authority, the public housing authority, but also, two, you can reach out to your city hall or whatever the municipality is that receives funding from HUD, the CDBG funds, and you can speak to them about their contracting process and their procurement process. And then if you are a business entity already, look to see how you file your business with whatever that municipality's business registry is. And you can also reach out to HUD, and we can explain to you what the process is as well.
Can I,
if I can add something to that. My name is Eddie Wells Handy, and welcome you all. I want to ask this question. How many of you know what Section 3 is after this panel now?
After a vote.
Okay, this is good. Because you think all this money, where, all this money, how come you never heard of it? Right? And so your question, sir, is excellent, because one of our goals for this whole convening, because we're one here, is to get the word out. And what we've already found in trying to get the word out is there's no one-stop shopping for Section 3. So we couldn't just say to you, go to www.section3howdoiapply.com. And there should be. So we're looking for that kind of emphasis so that all of us will know how to become a Section 3 business concern, how to become a Section 3 worker, how to get involved with Youth Build. Because one of the two key things about Section 3, it is not susceptible to the challenges of it being race or gender-based, because it's income-based. So you're not going to get the legal challenges that you had to it. Two, it's money already on the table. So you don't need a new allocation or new anything. You don't have to lobby to get the dollars. The dollars are already there. We want to get the word out so that there is this queue of people wanting to get involved, wanting to become Section 3 workers. Some of you are from community-based organizations. Many of your clients are Section 3 eligible because they're low or very low income. It's not just public housing. The second thing we found missing is, the regional director said, go to your city And the city should be telling you this because most cities are CBG recipients, but they're not. So we need your cities to have a portal that say, I want to become, how do I become a Section 3 worker or a Section 3 business concern? So we want that from you. So, but before you leave, and I'll sit down, we need an elevator pitch on what Section 3 is. Something quick and easy and memorable. So the doors are going to be locked, and you're not going to be able to leave until we get that statement. So your question is very well taken.
Let me just give a quick example of we can talk about Section 3 again, public housing space, and talk about construction. But the city of Newburgh, anybody from Newburgh? So there's a lot of work in Rochester. So the city of Newburgh used their CDBG funds to do a program because the film industry was doing a lot of work in their town. And so they used the money to train young people on the different jobs throughout the film industry. And after that training, was able to place them and connect them with folks in the industry who was coming into town to do these movie shoots. And so that was a perfect use of their CDBG funds in order to hire young people under Section 3. And so there's, again, everything is going to table right now. And so this is an opportunity to have a conversation about how you get in there, how you jump in, because the money's on the table.
Before I go to the next question, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that we've been joined by my distinguished colleague, Inez Dickens.
This room should be packed with the discussion that's going on and what you can learn from this panel. And I'm so disappointed that it's not crowded.
But that's part of the work we're trying to do, right? Make sure people know it's important.
Exactly. Because with this, you can get the education in how to proceed in advocating for the needs that we have. So I'm glad that you're here. I hope more people come in. And I want to thank the panelists for being here this morning to share their wealth of knowledge and experience in what we can do. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I know we had a couple more questions. I want to get to it, and then I'll go to you.
So I'm Mike Patterson, City Council, Rochester, New York. I was amazed when you said that the Section 3 covers the CDBG dollars, because I don't think we even had that conversation or thought in our community. And it is my sincere, I got too many questions to try to ask and here. So, which leads me to the main question. Can we get you to do a webinar or training so that later on we can come back and continue this conversation? I'm here because I'm probably the only member of my city council that has ever even heard of Section 3 and is aware of it. And I was like, okay, well, if you're going to go to anything, go to the one you know ain't nobody else going to. And I think that's why this room is impacted, because people literally know nothing about this program. And if you do, that means you're already using it, so why you won't tell them about it? So it's my hope that we can get you, ma'am, as the regional coordinator for New York and New Jersey, to reach out to our housing authorities, but also to our local electeds in those communities that those housing authorities represent. And just do the webinar and the training, and even if it ain't you, as long as somebody has it and it's accessible, we'll get it, and then we can continue that conversation. Thank you.
I think absolutely. The point of having this conversation is A, to introduce people to the importance of it, but also the point of having not only the administrator but the other panelists here as well is so that folks can understand it's an ecosystem that has several parts that all need to work in concert. So we do need to have an answer when someone says, how do I get into the pipeline? We need to have an answer for why there are programs like Manny mentioned that are meant to be deep, reaching into the populations in these developments, but it's not working. So yes to webinars and sharing more information, and we plan to pursue solutions via every vehicle, hearings, fuller conversations, but thank you for saying that. Yes, is the answer. I promise to shut up in a few. here.
Richardson with Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of New York. I have a kind of multi-part question, so bear with me. We've been on site at the Matanzas houses for some time now, and like a lot of people in the room, never heard of this, right? And so we have very kind of instinctively have been developing our own kind of workforce development programming and trying to connect residents with job training and life skills and all the things that kind of help people economically lift up that community. So part of my question is, one is, how can we tap into those kinds of resources as a provider, but also New York City has been moving toward, I would say aggressively, towards the RAD program and PAC to try to revitalize public housing. And one of the things that we experienced was that because a property went through the conversion, they were now cut off from other NYCHA resources. And so how can we make sure that, one, as more properties in New York City, more developments, go through that conversion process, that they're not cut off from these resources, but also how can we connect the developers with this so that they know that they can build this into the workforce development initiative that should be part of any construction or anything that's happening in our development. So again, I gave you a lot, but kind of get it all out there. Thank you.
And thank you so much. And that isolates a significant deficiency that we have in public housing. Is one, the knowledge that it exists, and two, how it exists, right? So Section 8 residents themselves are Section 3 workers because they're low income, right? There's a priority system to Section 3 workers. The priority first is public housing residents under Section 9. First and second priorities are public housing residents. The first priority is the ones who live at the development that construction is happening, and the second priority is neighboring, if you live at a neighboring development. But Section 8 funds themselves does not trigger Section 3, right? So now the job, the workers are there, but the jobs now become diminished because it's not funded by the Section 3 financial assistance, unless it comes under housing and community development, right? Which is a narrow. Section 8 may trigger it, but it's a narrow funding source, right? So now we have to start looking at what public housing is and how to best maximize the opportunity. So in Section 9, redistribution of the funds is the priority of the program, right? It's not just funding capital and operations. It's also ensuring that the households are able to transition economically from extremely low to moderate. A lot of folks don't understand that the AMI system in that Section 8 has a cap of 80% of the AMI, where Section 9 has 120% of the AMI, which allows for more economic mobility. And so the way that we do that is we have to have more socially conscious contractors and more informed and engaged contractors as well, but also resident population, so that they can begin to claim what they have. Because a lot of the reason it's not on the table is because we don't know to claim it.
Let me just, one thing I want to jump in here. NYCHA recently, with Edna's help, pulled together a tracker, and it's a capital project tracker that's online and is on their system. And NYCHA is rare when it comes to public housing authorities with this. And the idea around this tracker was not just transparency, but for people to know where the funding was being allocated, where projects were located across the entire city, and be able to know when does it start, when does it finish, how much it is, what's happening, so that you can have that knowledge and know the developer, the construction team, and lean in, jump in. So that was one of the ideas around having this tracker. And then another thing that NYCHA has is the REASE program. And so a lot of people only know about REASE and then the Jobs Plus sites that are on NYCHA property. And that's how they're able to kind of steer folks in that direction and not really focus on Section 3. But that's what this is about.
I'm also, please.
I just wanted to add that if nothing else you take from this meeting, if there's a public housing development that receives HUD funds in your city, they are receiving Section 3 money that you or someone in your community should be able to access to train people in the jobs required to complete the task that that money is intended for. That's a reality. And to show you how big a reality that is, Manny sits on the NYCHA's committee examining Section 3, and he went through the contracts over the last 10 years, $3 billion worth of contracts. A third of that, 30% of $3 billion, $1 billion, right? Let's say roughly $1 billion was Section 3 eligible over those 10 years. $1 billion. How many people can you employ at $25, $30 an hour for $1 billion? And Takesha White, who has worked in throughout housing throughout all of New York City, she said plainly from the article we did about it. She said, "Look, a $200,000 contract to paint a lobby in a public housing development is not a big deal for that for the contractor overall, but that small minority contractor, $200,000 contract is life changing." And that's what we have to understand. We have to activate this money to get it to the people who can change communities and change lives, especially with what's coming now, especially with global warming coming and affecting these communities, especially with all this rain coming and flooding communities with people people who need help, can use jobs, can be helped through Section 3. So we all need to try to cap this, because this could make a difference in so many lives. And there's so much money, and the money's already there. You don't have to ask for the money. The money's already there. You just have to make sure the money is used as it should be used.
And I think all of these points are really salient. I want to say the thing that I think is maybe looming as an elephant in the room, and I think it speaks to the point about building trust with the community. Public housing residents have had experiences with NYCHA that don't foster trust. NYCHA has had experiences that don't foster confidence. We recently just saw this massive scandal related to contracting, right, which directly impacts Section 3. It's minuscule in terms of a drop in the bucket in terms of all of the larger spending, but I think it speaks to the issue that people don't have confidence that NYCHA is committed to making sure that these things come to fruition. Now, you see that same problem when you're talking about buildings and developments that shift into RAD Act or the trust. And I think that these are all interconnected, and we need to just be transparent about the fact that people don't trust NYCHA to do it. And I think the way that needs to be addressed is NYCHA showing meaningful commitment to choosing socially conscious developers, right? Making sure that that's an active part of the contracting process.
So let me just say this. So that's not, just real quick, not going to happen, right? Because they already showed over the years that they're not going to do that. So what are we going to do? You go right now to make sure. Well, what are we going to? What are people going to do to be able to put themselves in a place where they go to the table and you can't refuse them? Because this is what the entity is. This is the skill set. These are the certifications. When you say these are the types of jobs that we need on this site, and none of the residents have that skill set, oh no, they don't. I mean, here's a list of the people that do have this skill set. Like, so what does that look like?
And I'm going to go to the next question, but it's why we're here. And it's why I'm going to pitch all the time for people like Alicka to be recognized.
Good morning. And you, my name is Maria Forbes. I'm from the Bronx. I'm from New York City. Ooh, do I represent a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And hello to everyone on the dais, but I don't know who you are, sir.
Oh, that's okay. We'll hear your question.
Okay. I've been a long time Housing Authority Tenant Association president for over 33 years. Section 3 is not as complicated as it was. And I don't know if a lot of you went through it, so I just need to give a brief history to it. There was no problem until City Council passed a law that residents wasn't immediately hired. That's number one. Then as the years went on, because City Council in New York City proposed a law that passed that you had to have an OSHA identification as well as you had to belong to the union. How could a contractor come and fair business to the table saying you had to be a union member? Number 3, Reese is not even accessible to the city. Reese is so far off in Brooklyn, people get off the train, get lost, and turn back around and come back home because they can't even find Reese. The other complaint that I have is no, none of the contractors are in fair negotiation once they do get there. We should be trained well in advance before rack or pack come to the developments from the beginning. So anything that Section 3 covers, whether it's laborer, but why would we only want laborer positions? So someone said the economic development and the growth, whether it's short-term or long-term employment, why would I want to be a laborer when you could train me to be a carpenter, skilled trade, plumber, electrician, anything in that order, but NYCHA doesn't provide that to the residents locally in their developments, nor does the contractors come in good faith. So by the time you got RAD or PAC, sir, your residents should have been educated and trained to pick up those positions before the whole development was signed over to the contractor. Then the union has no respect for the residents, period, themselves. So when we don't have the respect of the contractor, let alone the unions, we just behind the 8 ball. I came here to hear something new, other than people saying they're going to go back, they're going to go back, they're going to go back. We've made so many recommendations and suggestions to this law. That is law. I don't see no amendment to it that change it other than something other than City Hall passed for the benefit of someone else. We never got the benefit of being OSHA trained, let alone we weren't in the unions. We weren't in the unions.
But I think do you mind?
So,
I have a list. By the way, your point was really it's great. I'm Clem Richardson. I'm a journalist. I used to work for the Daily News. I was an editor and columnist at the Daily News for 20-something years. Worked for New York Newsday, Miami Herald, Chicago Sun-Times, Atlanta Journal-Constitution.
Let me just end with this, that we had the controller, Scott Stringer, did an extensive report. Yeah. And nobody, that was you?
No.
And nobody followed through up on and just kept it. So we had put out a...
One thing she mentioned, I just want to mention one thing, madam, that you mentioned. Yes, they're not just carpentry and electricians. These are the positions that are actual Section 3 eligible. Management, administration, accounting, payroll, research, bookkeeping, purchasing, and word processing. Services, appliance repair, floors, marketing, carpet installation, janitorial, photography, catering, landscaping, printing, computer information, manufacturing and transportation, construction, architecture, bricklaying, carpentry, cement, masonry, demolition, drywall, electrical, elevator, construction, fencing, heating, ironworks, machine operations, painting, plastering, plumbing, surveying, and tile setting. Those are some of the positions, some of the jobs that are Section 3 eligible.
And that's why I also mentioned not just the public housing jobs, but looking at the CDBG funds that goes into cities and states and having a conversation with the cities as well.
But I want to say, I think to your point that we haven't heard anything new. This is my 4th year in office. I can't count what's happened before me, but I do want to point out that what you just said to me is new. The concept of restating.
I came in late.
That's okay. My name is Septimo, Manny, Septimo. I represent the South Bronx. But the point of these conversations and these rooms is that there to be two-way conversations, right? There to be sharing of information, taking it back. I didn't know that center was so inaccessible. We'll work on getting another one. We'll work on creating one-stop shop so that the gentleman's question on how to feed into Section 3 can be an easy answer. We'll work on moving the ball forward. I can't account for what happened in 2020, but I can account for the fact that we're here today to make sure that we're demystifying some of the things. And I hear your frustration, and I believe me when I say that we all share it, but we're also all very committed to changing it. So thank you for sharing that. Wait, I think I have this maybe in queue.
I wanted to piggyback off of what this gentleman was saying about RAD.
because I used to be actually a housing assistant, and I'm with Manny at South Jamaica Houses. What happens with RAD is when they come in, for the employees, they bring in their own employees. So those city employees now gets moved out. And when they get moved out, I ask someone, well, what happens when too many developments become RAD? They said, when we get to that bridge, we'll cross it, because you cannot put a city employee in another agency if there's no vacancy. And the question I'm asking under the Section 3, as he was saying, because of RAD, the tenants lose the protection under Section 9. So with that being said, can we use the CBDG funds to go and repair the building so that it doesn't have to be under RAD? That's what
So I don't want to start talking about the preservation trust and all of that, but I think that there are a lot of tools on the table right now to be able to use as models or even pilot projects. And so I would say that maybe, but that's the point of the conversation, and look to see if there's this is also like an organizing opportunity. And so use this time to strategize on coming up with a plan related to the RAD conversions. But I would say that the trust preservation, since it's here, it's passed by state, that's a perfect opportunity to get in there. And this is also convening, and so we are between HUD and legal skills. Like, we want to come out to your developments and have this conversation in your communities to strategize, because that conversation around what's going to happen with all the developments get converted with the current employees is not down the line. They're having that conversation now because of the budget. Is there a need to keep the workers? Or should we work with the cities and the states to transfer or look at attrition? So that conversation is happening. It started already.
I will go to the next question. Before you go, Manny, I just want to say there's a sign-in sheet. We'd love to keep in touch with all of you and keep you in this Section 3 conversation. So please make sure you sign the sign-in sheet.
Thank you. So I just also want to add to that, and we're talking about all these conversion solutions that solve the problem for government, but not really for the residents. What will save Section 9 from having to do any of these conversions is to actually make Section 9 work, right? So Section 3 is one component of Section 9. Resident management is another component of Section 9 that can help secure that those efficiencies of access that Ms. Fulton, how to do Ms. Fulton, always a pleasure to see, but that those efficiencies to access are resolved. Another issue is home ownership, right? That the residents themselves now gain equity directly with a resident management corporation purchasing and reselling the public housing unit back to the household. So making Section 9 work is the solution. Everyone keeps looking at us and saying, well, how do we save public housing? Well, let's just make it actually work the way it's supposed to. Section 9 is a progressive, was progressive back in 1969 when they amended it to look like what it looks like now, right? And it still has the opportunity to be life-changing. Even at the restricted access to Section 9, we've seen our communities flourish. We've seen people come out of public housing that have had a deep social impact on a large scale, from gold medalists to cancer patent holders, cancer medicine patent holders, right? And so let's not discount the ability of the residents and the resource that they can be in resolving this issue.
Can I just ask one question?
Oh, I'm sorry. There's a line. There's a question line. I'm sorry. I'm going to go to Carmen up there.
Oh, no, she was. First of all, good morning. It's good to see everybody. And just to piggyback off of what Manny said, I just became a 501c3 resident management corporation, trying to show a lot of people what resident management corporation is all about. We need to own our stuff. And the first thing we need to do is take step by step. The first step to resident management is taking a portion of it and making it work. But you have to partner with the housing authority. You cannot do this by yourself. Everybody got resident management all crazied up. If you don't work with the housing authority and with HUD, and I'm glad to see you, Alicka. I ain't seen you in a month of Sundays. I was wondering where you were. I hope I can get a meeting with you and we can talk.
I'm gonna ask for the question.
The question is exactly how can we teach our residents all together what resident management is all about? This is in our rules, and get it there. Because we must keep Section 9 alive. This PAC, all that, not even the trust, none of that is for the residents. And we're here because of the residents. Your job is because of the residents. So let's make it work.
And just real quick, so remember you was asking what can we do? Because Carmel has an actual RMC, that's like a perfect opportunity to that's like the model. It's perfect. It exists now because people kept talking about it. And so let's make an RMC that actually exists to be successful.
Yeah, long time standing here.
Good morning. My name is Vanessa Jones-Hall. I'm the team president for Astoria Houses. I also worked on the NYCHA project for Sandy. And I seen how with the Section 3, how that was a total fiasco with that $3 billion budget. They had an organization that was totally in charge of it that did not live in New York State. They hired everyone from other states to come in and do the work or contract or negotiate these contracts. And from this fiasco that just happened last week or so, it's evident of how we still are not getting it right. You had residents that were promised, like this gentleman mentioned, all these jobs that's supposed to be under Section 3. It wasn't apparent, and it's still not apparent to the residents to show what skills they have other than being a flagger. And that has always been my problem with Section 3, where you're not transparent, and also transparent on how these contractors are properly supervised and who is supervising them. And we always see this suffering in our community, and it's not fair for this to continuously happen. We're in 2024, we're still talking about the same thing from 2014 and 72. And it's like, when we're going to finally actually have a change? We come at these round tables, and it's a beautiful thing. I love to see all of you together, still strategizing and trying to come with a solution. But when is the resolution actually going to take place? We try to teach our young people how to be baton passable and become leaders, and when it's their turn to take our spot. But how can that be when the tools that are supposed to be provided to them is still have a great problem, because those who are in charge are still not doing the right thing? And I think this needs to be stopped and need to be changed, and finally be truthful with yourself on how you have an impact on these communities. Thank you for hearing me out.
Amen. I think that and I'll let someone else jump in, but I think the answer to that is we're strategizing on the specific ways that the policy is evolving and growing, but I think we also need to be sharing information with residents and make sure that residents actually know what's available, so they also know what's demand, how to hold their leaders accountable to say, hey, I'm supposed to be getting X, Y, and Z, I need your help to make sure it happens. But thank you for sharing that.
If I could just note two things. We have a number of volunteers who've been working with us, and the beautiful woman bringing down some of our sign-in sheets. Tamika Williams-Moore is a great volunteer, great resident association president, as well as a member of the NYCHA Federal Monitor team. So thank you, Tamika, and if you have anything that you wanted to say, we would extend the mic to you. Okay? The second thing is, if everyone knows how hard change is, and we in Legal Skills Center, we are looking at intergenerational change, so that we are setting the seeds that have already been sown in many instances, but to bring in the next generation of it. And I tell the story all the time. When I was brought into NYCHA to look at setting up a compliance department, people were talking to me about Section 3. And I said, what is Section 3? And I grew up in the Marcy houses. And when I learned what Section 3 was, I said, wait a minute. I would have had the Edna Wells Handy Turner Construction Company of the world had I known about Section 3. And so our first job is, what we're doing is we're putting together this comprehensive program for, if you are a city is you need to have a portal, and you need to monitor. You mentioned the new controller. We got what the controller needs to audit. Every year we hear somebody say you need to audit Sandy money. Yes. No one has audited Sandy money. And that's Section 3, disaster recovery. Disaster relief money is Section 3. So we're looking at that. We're looking at, as CBOs, what do your people are, by definition, Section 3 workers. So we believe it's now the time has come with the legislature, the regulators, the residents, the writers, the teachers, the candlestick maker, everybody is now the time for Section 3. And this is why we want this rallying around Section 3, because we're not going to let it go. And so we need you all for that. So when you ask, when you say we hear the same thing over and over again, yes, but now it's going to be the spiral, not just the circle. The spiral is take us up. So thanks for this. Tamika, did you have a?
I think we just have time for one more question, and we'll have to close it.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Teresa Martinez, and I work at the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene in the city. So I'm familiar with REIS, and I wanted to know if the money that REIS gets is money from this Section 3. I also wanted to know if, because it sounds like in order to remediate some of the issues that it sounds like this program has, it has to be multi-pronged. I'm wondering if small businesses are brought into the loop and are aware of this Section 3 money. This is the first time, and I've been a social worker for a number of years. I've never heard of this. I've worked with families that reside in NYCHA, never heard of this money. So do small businesses get education about the availability of this money so that they can employ people? And then the other thing, I see a lot of workforce development amongst 18 to 24-year-olds. There's also a need for people who are older than 24, and I also wanted to know if people who have working papers also qualify, because I work with a lot of undocumented individuals here. Thank you.
Great question.
So it sounds like, since you said you work at DOHMH, that there's a need to have an actual meeting with all the commissioners and leaders across all the city agencies, but not just New York City, but cities across the state of New York, because we have a city councilman here from Rochester who said he never even heard of it either. And so I want to just flag again that Carmen Keown just said that she has a formed RMC. And years ago, we constantly talked about RMCs and how can we get residents to form our RMCs. So now that we have one, let's make sure that it's successful in whatever success means. So that's one of the first pilot projects. And then another one I want to say is we need to have convenience. I'm not talking about this cute stuff where we have like a little back and forth conversation, but invite us, legal skills, with everyone else can in our team, and HUD and whoever else can be part of it, to your communities across the state to start from the nuts and bolts of what it is to where's the list of people with the skill set to go on the jobs that currently exist now that have the billions of dollars. And so that's what we are. We can talk about changing and tweaking and modifying the regulation all we want, but we need to activate and be a part of what I said earlier, the $15 billion worth of Section 3 programming that currently exists at this very moment.
30 seconds. 30 seconds.
For that information, Alicka, there is a grant called ROS. Back in the day, Hugh Spence would send out a letter saying if you wanted to disassociate yourself from NYCHA's application in order to apply for your own ROS program, the ROS program provides up to $1 million in funding for you to do your own program under REIS, because that's where REIS gets their money from HUD to operate the REIS program. If we don't tap into that money, but it's become so difficult, because this year I applied, and I needed $1 million in order to offset my invoices, paid for it, submitted to HUD to then get the money back. So where do we be able, when they say resident organizations, housing authorities, and other businesses are able to apply for them, but we don't have $1 million.
Okay.
So how do we get to apply for those Ross grant applications?
So I'm not sure it's going to be the first, second, or third convenient, but when we all come to your district, that's going to be on the agenda. How about that?
Thank you.
And those are the practical issues. I want to thank you. We're going to close here. I want to thank our panelists for an incredible presentation today. But there were so many great takeaways from this conversation. I want to thank you all for being here. And we will do meetings, and we will make sure that everyone who wants to be a part of it will be a part of it. And I know I'm on too many email lists, but I'm telling you, get on this email list so that we can make sure that you stay in touch and that when we continue to have these conversations, you can be at the table because we need as many voices as possible. Thank you all so much. Enjoy the rest of the conference.